the Nigerian security landscape is once again our focus tonight on the program, and is under intense scrutiny following a fresh wave of attacks across the northeast and northwest region, from insurgent ambushes to deadly bandit raids and a surge in kidnappings. Despite repeated assurances from the federal government and claims of military gains, questions persist about the resilience of terror groups, the effectiveness of current strategies, and whether the tide is truly waning. In a bid to stem the tide and respond to some of this, President Bola Tinubu directed service chiefs to relocate to Borno State, the epicenter of the insurgency, and a renewed push to confront the threat head-on. But with this change, the reality of on the ground, are Nigerian security forces overstretched, and what must be done differently to end the cycle of violence? Joining me tonight, everyone, is a man who once led the war against insurgency, who has been at the forefront of leading the multinational joint task force. He led the Nigerian army. He's the retired chief of army staff, Lieutenant General Buratai, who is live for us here in our studio. Thank you so much, General, and happy Eid al-Fitr to you.
Thank you. Happy Eid al-Fitr to all Nigerians. Thank you. To you as well.
It's good to see you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I'm pleased to be here.
I appreciate it.
you.
Let's get to it. And there are a lot of people say, cut the chase. What exactly is our problem in terms of fighting this insurgency? You, as a general, you did not only lead at the HQ here. You were right there in the center in the theater of war. You led troops and you fought and confronted these insurgents. But recently, there is few dynamics to the war. Does it look like Nigeria has lost momentum in the fight against insurgency?
Well, let me thank you once again for inviting me to be here. It's a privilege because I know PoliticsToday is one of your flagship programs that is well respected and well listened, not only nationally but globally. I just came back from the Middle East, and I've always tuned into the program. Thank God for the internet.
Yeah.
You can access, news live.
Everywhere.
So coming to the issue of this counterinsurgency, especially the Boko Haram incident in the northeast, as well as the northwest and part of the north central, is something that has historical antecedents, taken back probably to the 80s and then 90s and late 90s and so on, and then we now enter into the 21st century. It's really unfortunate that it has persisted. Well, I don't see that the insurgency is somehow overwhelming the troops. We're lucky, now we have more enablers in terms of the drones, both the ones that are armed as well as the ones for reconnaissance, and a lot of platforms have been injected. But the military still needs more of such platforms and the enablers. If you look at the landmass of the Northeast only, it's quite enormous. This is what we have always, even during our time, emphasized. If you look at it, the troops are so dispersed, and then the challenge of manpower, the equipment, all these things are challenges. If you see any attack, happening, on the troops, unfortunately, a lot of casualties of recent have been incurred. But I'm glad the recent Malumfatori incident, has really shown the capacity of the Nigerian military to turn things around, and they can do it. This set of service chiefs and then the generals within the headquarters, I've worked with them closely and I know their capacity. But we must understand one challenge, or the challenges of being in the fronts. It's not that easy. The issue of the terrain, the issue of even the weather, Then in terms of even resupply and having troops to have some rest, fatigue, all those things are factors that militate against, the troops' effectiveness, not the equipment only, So the human factor in terms of its ability to resist, the troop to resist, the elements, the weather elements and so on, contributes. But by and large, I have seen the assurances of the service chiefs, the the chief of defense staff, as well as the chief of army staff. They've been to the Northeast based on the directive of Mr. President, Commander-in-Chief. The Inspector General of Police was also there, and they've reassured Nigerians that they will handle the situation.
Yeah, I'm talking to someone who's had a varied experience. You've become a diplomat in Benin. You were General Officer commanding the 3rd Armored Division in Jos, part of the region of the country.
Who was? No, me, I wasn't. I didn't command 3D.
Oh, I thought you did in 3D.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I was at the MNJTF.
Okay, I know you were at the MNJTF.
Yeah.
My reference to some of your background and eventually becoming the Chief of Army Staff is to the effect that you understand the name and the nature of it. But what gives me worry is whether or not there are those who will say, when you were at the end of affairs, there are those who will think you had the opportunity to kill it off. Because we had the thought that technically we have defeated these guys, and you were just like a snake, cut the head off, cut the tail off, and leave it dead. What was it that you think technically did allow us to finally call it end of the game with these insurgents when you were in office?
Well, that's a very good point. And I've responded to this type of questions sometimes back. You see, once you allow insurgency to rear its ugly head in any country, all right, it's always difficult, very, very difficult to clear it within a specific time frame or a short time frame. I will give you an example. I was in Colombia. It took them over 40 years, almost 50 years, fighting insurgency in Colombia. The Tamil Tigers in Sri Lanka, over 20, 30 years, they've been fighting insurgency. So it's a very complex nature of operation that it requires the totality of, the government, the military, the intelligence agencies, and the people. And it has generally been referred to as the people's war, actually. This insurgency is people's war. Because they are the ones, let me emphasize what the CDS mentioned a few days ago. And to also correct, the misinformation that was given. I'm happy the CDS, clarified it. Mm-hmm. He wasn't talking political. If you look at the environment he spoke was in the Northeast, the Northeast operations. And if you look at where was he talking to, in which context, he was talking in the context of operations. So all what he said in the Northeast were operational, and it remains there. It wasn't political, and it wasn't, at the strategic level. If he had spoken about collaborators in Abuja, or he has specifically mentioned something in terms of political, then you can now read it in that context. But he spoke completely, based on the professional understanding at the operational level. So it wasn't political. Some section of the press took it as if he was inducting certain individuals within the region. All right?
So, it yes. brings me to this question. So when we said at the time that Boko Haram was technically defeated, what has happened since then?
let me conclude. I mean, from the earlier questions, you know, as I was saying, you know, Colombia, you know, Sri Lanka, it persisted for a long time. But we are not saying that it must be the same thing here in Nigeria. And we have this National Security Strategy 2019, and it's very clear. It has that provision for all of government approach in tackling the insecurity. And our focus has always been, you know, looking at the army. That is the army that must do everything clear and disseminate and, you know, and wipe out, you know, all the insurgents out of the country. But it's not like that. Just as I said, it is more or less the embedded problem that is within the society, and it requires everybody's effort. We have always mentioned that, you know, issue. Well, it will always be a wishful thinking, you know, for one to say overnight, you know, you will just clear this type of insurgency. These are people that have ideology, you know, and believe that they have a mission, and once they establish it, you know, they have a perfect society, which is not, you know, realistic in this type of environment or this context, Nigerian context. So technical defeat, you see, if you look at it probably, you know, clearly, you know, 2014, 2015, early up to July, even up to some part of June, I mean, August, September, the spate of bombings, you know, were so rampant on daily basis, from Maiduguri up to Abuja, you know. But as of 2018, or late, you know, end of 2016, you know, when this thing was declared technically defeated and so on, you discover that all those things have stopped. And all those, you know, local governments that were hitherto under the Boko Haram, you know, insurgents were all recovered, you know. So, you see, there are certain things, you know, that are very clear, you know. It has, all those roadblocks across the country were all relaxed. And we never had that type of, you know, pre-2015, you know, attacks. So, by all standards, you say they've been technically
But are they technically
defeated.
regrouping? Are you worried about the manner in which they look like they are resurging?
You see, I have mentioned it, and I warned, you know, at the time I was leaving office, time I was appointed ambassador, I warned, you know, that this is a cankerworm, and it may persist much, much longer than we assume. I mean, we are thinking, you know, it's very clear. And I didn't do it just out of, you know, wishful thinking or, you know, with any mindset in order, you know, to get, you know, attention to myself. No, because I know, you know, it's not just the military, it's not just the army's responsibility. It's not. You know, this had always been emphasized. And I've mentioned it, the National Security Strategy 2019, you know, spoke of the whole of society approach, you know, in tackling this insecurity. We have done our own up to 2018, 19, 2019, 2021, and so on. And those that took over from me continued. But was this sustained? The military has always been there. They have not left those places. And today, if you go to certain parts of the Northeast and even some part of the Northwest, you see roads, accessibility to certain areas, ungoverned spaces.
What you wanted was that the military should stay put and conquer those spaces and not allow these guys to go.
No. This is development. When you say the whole of society approach, development, you know, infrastructure.
They didn't follow through.
The government has to bring roads, you know, rail, improve infrastructure, improve the social, you know, amenities or facilities in those countries, employment, and so on. These are some of the all of society
is it
approach.
Too late to start working
It's not
on that?
late. It's not late.
So we need to go back to that whole of society
approach, yeah.
in ensuring that people get all of these amenities and be able to socio-economic issues.
Exactly.
But General, let me ask you: do you regret that when you were in office, you did not ensure the naming of the financiers of terror?
Well, you see, this is another issue. That's why we over-rely on the military. We over-rely on the army. You know, everybody has his own responsibility. All right? You can't say I should be responsible to name the financiers of the terror. No,
but the
institutions.
military under you, on the army under you, said there are those, you know, those people who are funding terror. The federal government of the day said they were going to name them.
They know who gave them that info. The government knows where the source came from. You know, we have other agencies that are responsible.
But did you feel frustrated that those names were not
mentioned? Well, it's not a matter of mentioning the names. Action should be taken, you know. Action should be taken.
And we still have these people working in society today, and we know them.
Well, I think there is, documents are there, you know, and those agencies know whatever is happening.
Are there reasons why the names were not released?
No, you see, the issue is not a matter of naming names, okay? Names can be mentioned, all right? But what follows is what is.
So they left them unprosecuted. They didn't go after them.
There are still some Boko Haram, you know, detainees or people that have been arrested for several years. They are still not being prosecuted, you know. So well, that is a challenge.
Yeah. You know, you were heavily criticized, and those who do not believe in the rehabilitation, reintegration, there are those who believe that if these people have killed Nigerians, innocent people, they don't deserve a second chance. They deserve to be killed also. They deserve to be prosecuted. But that concept of rehabilitation, giving them uniform, feeding them with Nigeria's money, and these are people who were up in arms against the state, and they're being given a privileged opportunity. I mean,
you see, I take responsibility, you know, for certain things that are strictly Nigerian Army responsibility. Okay, but even I don't want to say I'm disowning what transpired in the safe corridor, you know, operations. It is a government directive. It's a government decision. It's not an army decision, all right, to rehabilitate, you know, the repentant Boko Haram. The initial concept that we had was we gave them a timeline by which they must surrender. You know, between 2016 and, you know, first part of 2016 and up to August or thereabout, we gave them a deadline by which they must surrender. And if they surrender, we assure them of free passage, and then we hand them over to the appropriate government agency to rehabilitate them. All right? That was our intention. But that deadline passed, and we say, okay, no more. As far as the army was concerned, as at that point, you know, was involved directly in the kinetic operation to deal and degrade and also to clear, you know, the insurgents. And we did that. I'm sure you see my commanders in the field. General Ezugu is here with me, and so many other General Adeosun and so on, General Blamabu. These are, you know, officers that know what they are doing, and they did everything to degrade and deal with the Boko Haram insurgency. There are so many others, you know, General, that I don't need to mention everybody. So at that point, government now took another agency, which I don't want to mention, continued with this, with what we initially wanted, you know, to persuade them to come. But as far as the army was concerned, the deadline has passed. But after that, so the other factors, other interests came in. But unfortunately, they see it as if it is the army's responsibility.
But there are those who believe that measure was not effective.
Well, it has its own advantages and disadvantages, all right?
With the benefit of hindsight, do you think Nigeria should have entertained that kind of measure?
Well, to the point that the army, you know, had their own strategy, all right? But after that, you know, there are so many, you know, gaps. All right? And logically, anybody that has committed such crime, he should be prosecuted. Not just a matter of to pick somebody from the bush or from the battleground and just give him, you know, a uniform or give him dress and rehabilitate him. No, there are procedures, you know, to deal with them. So I think if there is, it may be reviewed, but the point is, you know, it is not strictly, it's not army responsibility, but the army contributed to that because it's a directive.
Today, we are facing what has become more or less a complicated matter, and that those who say, look, going into the elections, we might be seeing more attacks. There are those who say, look, but the military and the army in specific, who are the ground troops on the ground fighting this war, they are not well equipped. They are not highly motivated. You've been there, you've done that, you've seen it all. If you were to advise the government of the day, what must we do immediately to turn the end of the tide?
Thank you. First of all, you rightly said, I've seen it all. There is no part of the Northeast, where the troops have been deployed. Very few that I have not visited. I have moved both day, at night, at dawn, evening, and at times we drive throughout the day and throughout the night, moving to ensure that we motivate our troops, we reassure them, and we replenish them, and we also ensure that the threats are, prevented. So I told you at the beginning, the terrain, the area is so vast, but we have very few troops. Very few.
So we need more numbers.
We need more troops.
What do you think is a reasonable amount of soldiers or troops that we need?
As at the time, I did my initial assessment. All right, we need not less than 5 divisions in that place, because there are some countries that are less than the Northeast size. They have over 10 or more divisions to counter, deployed in their country.
So we need more bases.
More bases, more equipment, because of the vast nature of this.
Apart from Malari, which is a major division, what other divisions do we have around the Northeast corridor?
And as at now, we have sectors. There are 3 sectors which are almost, division status. All right? Yeah, there are 3. In Manguno, in Damaturu, as well as in Maiduguri. But the one in Maiduguri is even larger than all the 2 combined in terms of land mass. So, look at from Maiduguri, you go up to, border with Yola, Adamawa, or even part of Adamawa is part of the division. And then you go down off to the north, Malamfatori and so on. They're all under one division.
Okay, not Malamfatori, but if you are making successes in the Timbuktu Triangle, create a base to hold it down, and within the Sambisa forest, create a base, hold it down,
you see,
and dispel these guys almost on a permanent basis.
It's even more complicated now with the dispersal of troops or deployment of troops in the northwest and now in the north central.
So we are stretched thin.
Overstretched.
And these guys are now using more sophisticated
They're taking advantage of that.
Yeah.
They're taking advantage of that.
And they're using sophisticated weapons.
You see, that sophisticated weapon is relative, but they improvise mostly. They improvise, like the IEDs, and also they use the, motorcycle. Yeah, they have some limited drones and so on. And they use motorcycle to mount, machine guns or anti-aircraft guns on it. These are some of the criminal ingenuity that they apply, to take advantage of mobility and so on. But critically, apart from the government is as I said, the terrain is a big challenge, all right? The weather is a big challenge. All this can be overcome by a sort of, efforts, by the lower commanders, to be alert, to maintain vigilance, and these guys, once they lose surprise, that is the end. They can no longer fight. I think this is one key issue that I've always emphasized when I was there as the Chief of Army Staff. And that's why we don't give them space. We move all over, and ensure that the commanders...
General, with the benefit of hindsight now, if you had your way, the one thing that you wish you could do to change the dynamics of this war, what would that be?
Well, first of all, which I did very well, okay, was intelligence operation. Intelligence operation. And once we do that, we go into the, you may think it's not strictly military operations, but we have to do it. All right? You identify all those that enable them to move, to be resupplied, you know, and to also gather information about our troops and pass it to them in the bush. So intelligence operation should be the key. You know, we pick them in the towns, in the villages, in the motor parks to disconnect them. That is the first thing. I will give you an example. I mentioned my trip to Colombia. I had a very useful discussion with the Colombian Chief of Army Staff then. He said they developed the capacity to track and trace and arrest all their informants in Bogota, the capital, in the local governments, in the state, provincial capital, and so on. So they disconnected them from the cities, from the villages, from the towns, from the motor parks. So this is where all of society approach is important. And the other security agencies, the police, must also key into this to pick these people. Then, secondly, the capacity which the army is developing now, the defense headquarters is developing as well. I believe the use of these enablers, the drone that are being used, which is very effective. So if these two are developed, you know, which will be a thing of...
during your time, there are those who believe that intelligence, the intelligence community was very uncoordinated, and there are those who say it's better now. And most of the service at that time were working in silos, in isolation. The military was doing its own.
I think that is a perception.
I mean, that's a heavy criticism when during your time as Chief of Army Staff. Intelligence was there were no coordination. You guys were not really working together.
It's not that.
But there are those who think that things are better now.
No. It's not that we are not working together. There are challenges. Okay, there are challenges. A very big challenge. You know, certain things we don't need to mention it, openly like this. But there are challenges. That is the truth. All right. And that's why I was able to develop the capacity of the Nigerian military intelligence, to be able to track, and arrest, those guys. We achieve a lot.
Are those challenges been surmounted? I will see how those challenges now.
Well, yes, the challenges will continue to be there, okay? Because those capabilities, need to be maintained and sustained, and the equipments are needed to be regular, and so on. And are they sufficient? So you can't blame anybody, you can't blame the army or the navy or defense headquarters, but it must be sustained. That is the key.
Yeah, the challenges in the military is so much that they are embattled on all angles, a stretch thing. But when you now have a coup, and I'm not sure in your as a military, as a soldier and an officer, I'm not sure how many times you've accept coups ended in the last how many years. But we've seen attempted coup recently, and they're saying this is a worrisome trend. Does it bother you that we are seeing this kind of trend in the Nigerian army? What does it portend for democracy?
Well, we have served almost 6 years, 5.5 years as Chief of Army Staff, and you see how we are able to defend democracy, how we are able to motivate troops throughout, all right? How to make sure that troops, officers and men, do not deviate. I had on several occasions had to caution them, and so forth, in order, for them to maintain focus on their professional line. And you must always engage the troops. You must engage them.
And make them happy.
Make them happy, and also make them, train and retrain, and operate as well. You see, during my time, there had never been any dull moment, from Crocodile Smile. Every quarter we have one engagement or the other, one operation or the other, So if certain is maintained, I'm sure there won't be anybody who will start contemplating.
Does it bother you that we're having attempted coup?
Well, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. And so far from what the information from the public domain, the young officers, and from the initial signal that came from the defense headquarters, it says they were disgruntled because of loss of promotion and so on and so forth. So, but we are still yet to get the full, investigation details, and they've not yet to be, arraigned for any of this, and so that we get the full gist, so that we know the position.
All right.
Yeah, but I believe the Nigerian army is highly professional. They have remained apolitical for a long time, and anybody who feels that there will be a change, at any time, not now or even in the future, I think he's misplaced. The platform is open for him to join politics if he wants power, and so on. He can resign or retire, as the case may be.
Yeah. On a final note, I'd like to ask you, the president had made a decision, the service chief should go on the ground, and a lot of what's been said about how we need to finish this war, but those who say, look, we might be seeing more of these attacks as we approach the election. You as a general, I mean, one who has seen it, like I said earlier, if there is one thing you have to say, not only to the troops, to the officers, to the commanders, and even to the government of the day, how do we as a people confront this war and win it once and for all? What do we need to do now?
Well, first of all, if you want to talk in generic terms, good governance, I think it solves everything. And not only at the federal level, at the local government level, state level, okay, and institutional levels. Good governance is all encompassing. Most of the challenges we have in this part of in the country generally, originate from the local governments and then to the states. There are certain, if I talk certain things, they will say as if I'm attacking individual or group or certain people. But the point is, really, at the state level, they have a lot to do. I remember, during the, regional government period, the northern region and so on, the eastern region, the western region, the governments there, they are de facto head of states of those various regions, and they embark on so many developmental projects, establishing institutions, including medical, educational institutions, infrastructure, and so on, investing so much in the people. But unfortunately, for a long time, all those things have been, stopped. You don't see any cohesion within the states, where, the state authority has responsibility for everything that happened within the state and the people, taking care of their welfare and so on. And this is a major challenge. You must employ, create avenue for employment as well, where possible, employ the youth, the teeming youth that are roaming the streets, create opportunities for them, to strive, and contribute to the development of the state. So the states are key, in development. Yes, it's not the federal government. Even this insecurity, if the states really stand and do the right thing, the federal government, nobody will look towards the federal government.
All right. General Tuko Buratai, who is a former Chief of Army Staff, thanks so much indeed for your time. And I appreciate your time tonight.
My pleasure.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Up next on the program, is the APC heading into a credible national convention or a coronation already decided behind closed doors? Allegations of imposition is brewing controversy over possible tenure extension and deepening cracks within the ruling party. Plus, can the APC withstand mounting opposition pressure and still hold its ground ahead of 2027? We put the questions to APC chieftain Cletus Obon. Don't go away, everyone. We'll be right back.